appeal.
Welcome back. We're joined this week by Labor MP Ed Husic, Julian Leeser, the former Executive Director of the Menzies Research Centre, Miriam Lyons from the Centre for Policy Development, and Liberal MP Josh Frydenberg. Now, the issue of 457 visas has been a fascinating one in the last month or so. Today, the Immigration Minister pointed to some new figures from his department showing there's been a 21% increase in 457 visas this year compared to February last year. He said there's also been an almost 10% increase since last month in 457 visas, which at a time when there hasn't been a similar increase in overall employment. So, Ed Husic, first to you, is this evidence that there's a problem?
Well, I think it shows that you do need to keep a close eye on the balance between being able to, in an economy where people are keen to get work, and one of the things that doesn't get reported often is people want more secure work, not just having part-time and casual options, but having full-time ones as well.
Well, I'm pretty sure 457's are full-time work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But there's this issue within the existing workforce of being able to have more security of employment that's been there for quite some time, and being able to also bring in skills where shortages exist. And the whole issue of skill shortages have been around and been noted as a capacity constraint on the economy for quite some time. Stretching back into the Howard years as well. So what we want to do is have a system that ensures that people locally get the employment outcomes that they want, and where employers can't find people because of skill shortages crippling them, being able to have 457s fit the bill.
So is the system working or not?
Well, I think overall it is, but you want to be able to always keep a close eye to make sure that, for instance, some of the stories that I've heard where people get here on a 457 with one company and then get shifted to another on a lower salary outcome, these are the type of things that you want to be able to clamp down on. But you do need to find a way to skill people up locally, either through vocational and tertiary education outcomes, and also pathways, I should say. But find the way to help employers fill gaps that need to be filled.
The hypocrisy is amazing here, David. I mean, let's get it right. The Prime Minister's own communications advisor, John McTiernan, is here on a 457. Tony Sheldon, one of the union leaders, has a series of staff members who are employed on 457s. I mean, next we'll be hearing that 457 workers are running for Labor pre-selection. I mean, that's how bad the situation has got. Let's put some facts on the table. Firstly,
that would be a good change from you guys.
Let's put some facts on the table. In January of this year, Chris Bowen, as Minister for Immigration, said that you've got the balance right on 457s. In fact, ironically, Julia Gillard, when she was in Beijing in April 2011, said in a press conference there that we've got the balance right on 457s. Fact number two, they've grown by more than 50% in the last year under your government. You've been in government for 5 years. If there was a problem with 457s, and there's only been one successful prosecution that I'm aware of under 457s, you would have fixed it by now. And third fact is that they actually fill voids in the marketplace, whether they're health workers, whether they're engineers, whether they're accountants, but not, press secretaries for Tony Sheldon.
It is embarrassing, isn't it, when union leaders like Tony Sheldon have to admit they've got in their close staff 3 people on 457 visas, including a media advisor. There's a lot of journalists who've lost jobs in the last year who could do that job. You're
not up to it.
I think you need to take a broader view than just picking out isolated examples like that.
But hang on, these are the ones it's union leaders who are banging on about this.
Hang on a second, but you need to be able to...
hypocrisy.
You need to take a broader view than that, and also look at, talking in terms of your approach, in terms of the coalition approach, that has said 457s will be the mainstay of the immigration program. I mean, you want to be able to...
But back to the question, though, it's hypocritical, isn't it?
No, because you're picking... Look, the reason why I don't want to necessarily accept the premise of your question is because you're picking certain cases like that when what we're trying to do is look at the broader situation.
Can I actually address that case? So my understanding, at least with the Tony Sheldon thing, was that they had actually advertised the positions first in Australia and then they'd gone unfilled and then they brought in people on 457s, which from what I understand is what the unions had been asking Labor for all along, right? They were asking to at least make sure that there was genuinely a skills shortage by asking to make sure that people actually had advertised those positions in Australia before bringing people in on 457s. So it's not necessarily inconsistent, but I agree that the tub thumping that surrounded 457s, both outside and inside the government, that has appeared so suddenly, it's hard to imagine that that's not somewhat politically timed. That doesn't mean, though, that there isn't actually an underlying problem with the growth going so fast. You know,
just in the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, so you know, they were sort of deregulated a while back, and you know, it does sort of seem like they have been growing out of proportion to the ability to actually keep an eye on them to make sure that workers aren't being exploited. Like the last time I checked, the DEAC only had 37 people to inspect the workplaces of people nationally who are on 457s. Right, yeah. So some of those changes, some of those tweaks, you know, it's hard to argue that they're not sensible.
I find the politics of this quite strange. I mean, it wasn't just Tony Sheldon and the TWU, it's the MUA as well, but why would the government want to put themselves in a completely opposite position to where most of the community is? Most of the community support skilled migration, and that's essentially what 457s give you. Where the government is offside with the community has been on the border protection issues, the boat arrivals, the asylum seeker issues. I don't know why they would want to particularly pick this fight, particularly as it seems that it's been some of the unions who have been mainly tub-thumping, as you rightly say, Miriam, about this, and that they've been people who've decided to avail themselves of foreign workers under 457 visas.
I think you're actually wrong about where the community is at.
Yeah, I was going to say.
The community is pretty supportive of this. I suspect that some of the tub thumping is appealing to the slice of that community who is supportive of this for the same reason that they don't like Labor's stance.
I don't think Labor would be pushing this quite so hard if they weren't confident that the politics are
I think the union leaders like this 457 policy, but I don't think that the majority of the community do. Union density in Australia is less than 20%.
There's a recent poll that shows that they do.
And I think that, you know, Australians have generally supported skilled immigration because there's an economic case for skilled
immigration. But Julian's right. Julian's right, because what he's actually saying is that they understand that skilled immigration is critical to the health of the economy. And by pulling out these important people, whether they're health professionals, whether they're accountants or they're engineers or other important skilled workers, not the media advisors to Julia Gillard and to Tony Sheldon, but other important workers in the economy, they're actually strengthening our whole economy. And that's why people are pulling them in. I mean, that's the bottom line here. We've got to get what is right for the Australian economy. And this has been working. And you guys have been in government for 5 years, Ed. Why now? It's only because Julia Gillard's leadership was on the precipice of defeat and she had to go to the unions with another sop. And that's what this is about.
Look, I just want to go back to Julian's point. I think it is a bit more complex than just making a blanket view that, you know, everyone supports it. People want to ensure that they can, you know, if they're going for employment, they see that there's a vacancy, that they can get a job and not necessarily see it being filled by a 457 visa holder. So there is that. I mean, I certainly, hang on a second, but I definitely see.
It's tiny.
Well, no, but yeah, and that's the issue too. When you're going close to full employment, you've got to be able to find balance. My point is about finding balance. I recognise that there is enormous value to the economy of bringing external skills in and also ensuring that we can fill skill shortages, because you can't have employers hanging. But you also need to recognise that there is an anxiety on parts of people where they are trying to find full-time work. Coming back to my point earlier, you know, about this difference between part-time, casual and full-time, where they're wanting to get more employment because all they can get is part-time, and then seeing full-time jobs being filled by 457s. So it is a balancing act that we do need to be able to successfully navigate.
And is this a particularly strong issue in your Western Sydney electorate?
Beg your pardon?
This is a particularly strong issue in your Western Sydney electorate.
I mean, look, people, and this is why I'm saying, I'm drawing, in terms of your point, Julian, that, you know, I do get those comments from time to time. Like, you know, we're operating in a globalised economy. We are going to have people move, you know, to chase jobs, and we'll have people that want to come here and fill roles as well. And those links are really important. I've, you know, argued in favour, for example, I've been quite vocal on enterprise migration agreements. I mean, you know, my old man actually got here in a form of it to work on the Snowy Mountains scheme. And I do have arguments or discussions with people locally where they do worry about the impact of 457s on local employment opportunities, but it does take the ability for us to be able to explain, to walk through and build consensus. And that's what I really think is important.
The nature of the 457 is it's really designed to fill a specific skill shortage. And Prime Minister in her speech today contrasted our unemployment rate of 5.4% with the US unemployment rate of something like 11%. we have almost full employment here. Some of the people who don't have jobs don't necessarily have the skills for these particular roles that are being filled by the 457 visas. I just think you need to have the greater flexibility, and 457s provide you with that flexibility to fill the skilled positions that the economy needs.
Julian,
I guess I'm curious about what it is exactly about the policy changes. You know, let's forget the rhetoric. What is it about the policy changes that means that those genuine skill shortages won't be able to be filled with 457s?
Well, I think you can't dismiss the policy changes from the rhetoric itself, because the policy change was designed to meet the particular politics that
I don't think the
Just for
policy change
argument's
is
sake.
anywhere near as strong as the rhetoric.
I think that's correct. I mean, I think this was cynical. This was a cynical exercise in order to try and win over the support of the union movement and win over some union members in relation to concerns about 457s. Unions have never liked 457s, despite the fact that, as we know today, a number of their staff are employed on 457s.
Let me come back to the point. I mean, you made the point about skill shortages need to fill a particular need where those skills don't exist in the existing workforce. This is my other gripe that I have, particularly with the Conservative side of politics, where when you were in government, you'd cut. You didn't support the TAFE system because a lot of the people here...
that is absolutely set up 38 technical colleges.
And this is the point I'm making, is that instead of supporting with the states and territories their vocational education system, what you did is you set up a rival system through those very colleges that you made reference to. Then you fast forward to state governments now in New South Wales and in Victoria, undercutting the spending, the support. That is absolutely true. And what you're doing through that is you are worsening the skill shortages that lead us to have to use 457s to fill those gaps.
Ed, short memory, go back to my EFO, just the end of last year, updating last year's budget, and you cut education and skills.
So you're denying that the Victorian government cut...
Well, actually, can I just say...
vocational
what is happening in the States at the moment?
And our new Premier, Dennis Napthine, just announced $200 million more for...
They had to correct what they were doing.
Yeah, that was after they gutted it. Exactly. You know, what's happening with the TAFE system at the moment is that we're actually undermining the role of TAFEs to be able to meet exactly those areas of skill shortage, which are in mining, they're in construction, they're areas which are actually more expensive to teach, and at the moment TAFE is not adequately compensated for the greater expense of teaching those kinds of skills.
A lot of these 457 visas are coming into IT jobs, aren't they? Not so much
IT
mining.
was probably the third highest user, but there are skill shortages in the sector. And a lot of that is because the number of people going through vocational education has slumped. Like I think.
But is it because of underfunding of TAFE, or is it because of a lack of interest?
Well, I don't think there's a lack of interest.
You can't have it both ways. You can't cut funding as these guys have done to technical skills area, and then on 457s to say, well, we need to pull that back as well. I mean, at the end of the day, there is a link here between
state governments have undercut.
So have you guys.
Conservative. There is never conservative support or commitment to vocational education.
That's not true.
Well, it is for the reasons I went through. And the other thing is too, in terms of IT, to come to your question, there are two pathways, either through tertiary or vocational. But you've seen the numbers drop, and you need to be able to address it. And if you don't have that level of training there, that creates the environment where 457s have to come into play.
In fact, it's an unintended consequence of a very good federal policy that's seen the decline in TAFE, and that's the demand-driven university system. You have seen, as a result of the demand-driven university system, a lot more people who used to go to TAFE going to universities instead. And indeed, what's happened in TAFE is that it's been forced to focus more on those traditional areas of expertise rather than on degrees and other things that compete with the university sector. That's the real untold story of why there's decline in TAFE.
In a lot of these industries that we're now seeing 457s coming on. On that point, we are going to have to wrap things up. Not a lot of agreement on that issue, at least. But anyway, Ed Husic, Julian Leeser, Miriam Lyons and Josh Frydenberg, good to talk to you all tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for your company as well. We'll be back same time next week. See you then.